Together. This is one of the 3 movies I was looking forward to this year, along with Mickey 17 and Weapons. And I just want to say, it is very important that we support original ideas from new directors, new creators in the industry. They're hardly ever given a chance to go beyond just a singular film. So when somebody comes around and this is their first feature film, an original film that has been wrongfully accused of plagiarism. The script for Together was copyrighted many, many years ago, before any sort of controversy online. I don't want to get into it because it's just needless drama. But I think it's very important to support these new ideas and tell Hollywood we love originality, we love fresh eyes, fresh material. So I believe a movie like Together is something that we should all watch together. That being said, I'm not really going to get into spoilers for this whole thing. I would just say go watch the movie. It's a very well-crafted movie. However, I do want to talk about expectations. You know, when you go into a movie, you have certain expectations. And my expectations for Together is very, very high. And watching the trailer to this movie, it was very intense. It was a really well-made trailer. But I don't believe it lives up to what the trailer was. It's almost a very different style of movie than what it is. And to that point, it was sort of a disappointment to watch. But I'm not saying I regret watching it. I did enjoy the film. However, I would say this film is more of a mysterious, light horror movie, even though there are some jump scares in it. And it's just hard to kind of figure out what this movie actually is, because it's very light on horror, a little bit more on mystery, what's actually going on. The stories and the themes in this movie are kind of very light, and it is what it is. You know, they gave you the story that it is what it is going through it. You know, there are some suspense and there are some thrills. There are great, thrilling, tense moments. Some actually genuinely scary moments. Even though I say it's a very light horror, there are some moments in here that are pretty freaky. So overall, I'm just like kind of on the fence about how this was. Especially getting through the beginning of the film, I felt like it was very, very slow. Because it was setting up the world and setting up the characters. And sometimes you can do that through a tense, maybe you can do it through an action sort of way. But it was kind of like you have this mystery, and you want to know more about this mystery, but hold on, let's do this other stuff. I'm not saying that doing that other stuff should be cut. You know, by the time you get through the film, you're like, okay, this was all very cohesive. You know, it all dealt with what the characters were going through. So it just kind of had me wondering, when are we going to get back to the mystery? Because the mystery is like put on display within the first scene of the film. The first scene of the film, I think, is great. It's a very good hook. But the film doesn't pick up again until, I want to say, 30, 45 minutes into the film. When you get to the very first, like, freak out, gross out kind of moment, this movie is very freaky on a lot of different levels. Enjoyable, interesting, strange. You know, this is a world that I love. I love interesting, new, fresh worlds. Something that's not necessarily grounded in this reality of Earth, but, you know, it could be a thing that happens. You know, it's imaginative. And I very much appreciate that with films. I think it's great. I think the lore is great. I think the world is great. I think, you know, the directing, Michael Shanks, it's his first feature film, and I think it was very, very solid. Solid directing, cinematography, pacing, story. It's his story. It's grounded and real and frustrating. You know, you're frustrated at these characters, but, you know, it happens, and this is how, you know, people are sometimes. And there's different paths we can take and different roads we can choose. I just really wanted to love this movie. But I did enjoy it at the end of the day. It wasn't as terrifying, as scary, but it was still very, very freaky. Very, very memorable at the end of the day. If a movie is memorable, like, I'm not going to go 10 years from now and completely forget what was that about? What happened? You know, you will remember this film. For sure. I guarantee you that. For that reason, I give it 7 out of 10. I liked it, just not the best, but I gotta end it off with, like, this film and films like these we need to support. You know, Neon, A24, and I'm just gonna throw Blumhouse in there. They're really carrying originality, special, unique movies in Hollywood, and it's something I want to see more of. Obviously, these are lower budget, but it doesn't take away from the experience. And also, yesterday I watched a Korean film, and I was just thinking, like, all these foreign films that I watch are so original. You know, there's not sequels and remakes and based off of comics or based off of something else. It's just complete original films, and they might not always be the best, but they're certainly unique. And it's something that we can't lose here. We can't lose the sight, of the goal of why we create movies, to make a connection, to make an experience, to entertain. It's not all about the bottom dollar and what can bring in the most money and views. So together, we gotta see it. We gotta support it. Support these films. Support Michael Shanks. It's a good film with a good studio behind it. So yeah, go watch the movie. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you guys next time.